You don't usually register it as disrespect when it happens. That's part of why it works. It's a meeting where someone interrupts you mid-sentence, then continues as if you hadn't spoken. It's a family gathering where a relative makes a joking comment about your choices, just sharp enough to sting, then smiles. It's a coworker who responds to your idea with, "Sure, if you think that'll work," and moves on. Nothing dramatic, nothing you can easily point to. And almost immediately, your attention turns inward. You start checking yourself. Was that rude, or am I being sensitive? Did they mean it that way? That moment of self-questioning is not a flaw in you, it's the mechanism. Subtle rudeness works by handing you extra mental work. While the other person stays relaxed, you start carrying the cognitive load, interpreting tone, managing meaning, smoothing the interaction so it doesn't feel awkward. Think of someone like Sarah. She's thoughtful, socially aware, good at reading rooms. In conversations, she notices shifts immediately. When someone sounds annoyed or dismissive, she feels it before anyone else does. So she adjusts, she clarifies, she softens, she fills the silence. People often describe Sarah as easy to talk to. What they don't see is how tired she feels afterward. That tiredness isn't random, it's emotional labor, the quiet effort of regulating the interaction so it stays comfortable for everyone involved. And people who rely on subtle rudeness tend to sense exactly who will do that work for them. Contrast that with someone like Mark. Mark doesn't pick up on tension as quickly. When a comment lands awkwardly, he doesn't rush to repair it. Sometimes he doesn't even notice. He just keeps going. The room often adjusts around him. Neither of these people is right or wrong, but when Sarah and Mark interact, guess who ends up carrying the weight? This is where patterns form. Rudeness doesn't need aggression to succeed. It only needs imbalance. One person adapts, the other doesn't have to. And if you're someone who values harmony, who's attuned to emotional shifts, you're more likely to feel responsible for restoring balance. Your nervous system prefers resolution over friction. So when something feels off, you instinctively move toward fixing it. You explain your point more carefully. You laugh to ease tension. You let the moment slide. Outwardly, you stay composed. Inwardly, something tightens. If you've ever replayed a conversation later, thinking about what you should have said, that's your system still regulating after the fact. The interaction ended, but the emotional work didn't. The shift begins when you stop trying to resolve the moment immediately. Imagine this instead. You're in a meeting. You offer an idea. A colleague responds with a dismissive tone. "Yeah, that's obvious," and looks away. Normally, you might rush to clarify, to justify why you brought it up. This time, you pause. Not long, just long enough. You look at them calmly and say, "What do you mean by that?" No edge, no accusation. Now the dynamic changes. The implication they relied on no longer floats in the air. They have to explain. Maybe they backtrack, maybe they soften, or maybe they double down and reveal something they would have preferred to keep subtle. Either way, you're no longer doing the interpretive work alone. This is what clarity does. It redistributes effort. Another scenario. A friend makes a comment about your lifestyle that feels condescending. Something like, "Must be nice to have that much free time," said with a half smile. In the past, you might have laughed it off, then felt strangely irritated later. This time, you say, "That came across as dismissive." You don't raise your voice, you don't accuse them of being rude. You simply name the impact. Watch what happens next. Most people aren't prepared for this kind of calm observation. There's nothing to argue against. You didn't attack their character, you didn't escalate. You anchored the moment in reality. And here's where many people stumble.
After naming the behavior, there's often an urge to explain, to add context, to make sure the other person understands why it bothered you. That urge comes from empathy, attunement, and the habit of internalizing responsibility for others' reactions. But notice what happens when you keep explaining. The focus shifts back to you managing their understanding. The emotional labor creeps right back in. A boundary doesn't work that way. Picture someone at work who consistently talks over you. You finally say, "I'm not okay with being interrupted like that." Short, clear. Then you stop. No lecture, no justification. That silence can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to smoothing things over. But it's doing something important. It's letting the boundary stand without being softened. Some people adjust immediately. They didn't realize the impact, and now they do. Others don't. And this is where patterns reveal themselves. Think of someone who responds to boundaries by pushing. They sigh, they roll their eyes, they say, "Wow, I was just joking." The old version of you might have rushed to reassure them. "I know, I just meant." That reassurance is more emotional labor. Another option is neutrality. A calm, "all right," or "noted," and nothing else. No sarcasm, no tension, just a refusal to engage further. For people who rely on reaction, who test limits to see what they can get away with, this is unexpectedly disarming. The behavior has nowhere to go. And sometimes the clearest example is the simplest one. You're at a gathering. A conversation turns subtly disrespectful. You feel your body tighten. Instead of staying and absorbing it, you say, "I'm going to step away." And you do. No explanation, no drama. This isn't avoidance, it's discernment. You're choosing not to spend your cognitive and emotional resources on something that doesn't deserve them. What's happening across all these examples is the same internal shift. You stop outsourcing your stability to the interaction. You stop relying on the other person's approval or comfort to feel grounded. That's the difference between external validation and internal steadiness. When your sense of balance depends on how smoothly conversations go, subtle rudeness has power over you. When your balance comes from your ability to stay regulated and clear, that power fades. People who are rude in quiet ways aren't intimidated by aggression. They're disrupted by composure, by someone who doesn't rush, doesn't over-explain, doesn't absorb what isn't offered respectfully. So the next time something feels off, pay attention. Notice the real moment of choice. It's not about the perfect response. It's about whether you automatically take on the work of fixing the discomfort. Ask yourself a quieter question. Who is carrying the emotional weight right now? And then another. Do I need to? Often the answer changes everything. Rudeness doesn't disappear because it's confronted loudly. It loses its grip when it meets someone who doesn't take it in. Someone steady enough to let moments breathe, to name what happens without judgment, and to walk away without resentment. That steadiness isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. But it's felt. First by you, and eventually by everyone else.